So this is just a sketch of what we were talking about. The blue line is, I use blue crayon because you can actually photocopy this in such a way that the blue line disappears and you can then carry on drawing on it. I've already chosen my manufacturer. This company here, George & Goldberg, is out of Los Angeles. They don't exist anymore. They retired, and I used them because they were very theatrical and they could build items like this. Oh, one of the things he wanted was a control console that looked like it was built like a musician. So it's just really like a giant ghetto blaster. Yeah, and little details. And you can show this to the client. And it keeps him on track again. Yeah, this is good. This is what I imagined. Great. So we can now move straight forward to a more refined drawing. There's a bass clef for the activity lever, you know, action and speakers. And this had a little rotating disc. There's a light behind it, but it can only, the light can only go through a slot on the disc. So you see a little, you know, oscilloscope kind of pattern happening. And it's just cosmetic. It was seen, this was all done for a PBS television special. Took weeks, a lot of money. And it was a 1-hour program. So this was kind of good for close-up detail. It was all in the background, but once you've seen it, you've seen it. The final drawing. So this is it, Mr. Lin. I want to do this. This is what we've agreed on. This is what we've talked about. Here's, you know, we've got the cellists. He said, oh, well, actually, the cellos are over here. These turbines slowly turned, and there was a light inside that would flicker as, you know, Ridley Scott kind of effect. And he looked at it and said, well, I don't know. I'm not sure about the city or the bushes. I said, but you wanted it to crash in Central Park. I know, but that was... So he's gone off his own idea. Oh, what are we going to do? So I said, well, as it happens, I have my own idea. So the beautiful city, you'll find this on that website. He wanted something more industrial. So here's my idea. Started as a dome and it opened. Did I double click that? No, it's on automatic. Here it is on reality. This is actually the beginning of the show. All of this opened up. You'll see at the top there's a mother grid of truss which holds all the motors to wind all this up. There's the screen that popped up. You can just see in here's the control console, which was a small close-up feature. And they played for 3 hours. And that's really what it is. This is ordinary truss. I designed around components as opposed to having curved truss made. I found, again, we chose the lighting company because they had this particular radius of curved truss, and they had quite a lot of it. These panels are custom made, but it's only fabric on aluminum frames. Minimal material, minimal effort. That was the expensive but cheap part because we didn't own it. What else? Oh, yeah, here. This is all in CBS television studio in Los Angeles. There's some old technology PAL amps. He particularly wanted these because they were reminiscent of a time he had a spaceship once before in the early 1970s. And this whole stand-up glove thing was rather good. This is something I really got into, this particular shape. It's very easy with known materials. It holds up lights really well, and it makes an astoundingly good backdrop. There are many ways of producing this. And this canopy overhead was rather nice. Once you put truss in the air, consider the space yours. And you don't just leave it as truss. You can fill the spaces in between with lightweight material, cause a whole roof. Lighting's about objects to illuminate. It's irrelevant, actually, if you don't have any object to illuminate. You don't see the light at all. Smoke, actually, and haze, that all falls into an object category. Without haze, you wouldn't see the beams. Without a piece of scenery, you wouldn't see what the light's doing. It'd just carry on going for infinitum. What else we got here? Oh, yeah, just more of the same. Me looking pleased. So that's how the storyboard worked and how Jeff Lynne got to a design that I'd already thought of that I didn't suggest initially. So more drawings versus CAD drawings. This is something I did in the 1970s, a band called Hawkwind, psychedelic. They were into the English myth, Atomhenge. This is called, it was a cross between the Atonium in Brussels, which is a model of an atom, and Stonehenge. and it was made out of fiberglass. Pretty straightforward. This is all made in molds. They're ordinary 150-watt light bulbs on festoon cable, and that's all backed on wood. Very primitive, very effective. It looked really good. We had projection light shows. These are all sequences of slides. These are real terrible photographs, but then nothing really survived from that time. So that's all it is, big geodes. These are one piece. All the tubes, connecting tubes were pieces, single pieces. And it all just, but it was bulky. And in a way, if I redid this again, I'd mostly make these inflatables. And I would make those flat, not curved. The illusion of curve can be done with curved lines projected on it, as opposed to having a curved structure. Or again, you can make it as very lightweight material on lightweight frames. But these were expensive to transport. They were bulky, they were heavy, and they're a raw pain in the arse, actually. But they look good. As I say, this is the day I was learning very much in a hurry. A drawing could be as simple as this. This is a thing that we did for Peter Gabriel in the mid-80s. Moving lights, these were actually Vari-Light, Mark I Vari-Lights. This is a 22-foot film crane. Actually, we had them specially built, but the designer was already made. They were originally 12-foot film cranes. Had the manufacturer make some 22-foot long. They ran on, actually in here I've drawn a tripod. Actually, it was a four-legged dolly that ran on regular rented camera track, and it went right round the stage. And there were 4 of these that, there's a regular truss, side truss, and this truss actually ended up being diagonal across the stage. And this vertical truss came down to 23 feet, and these things just crept underneath it. And by moving them into different positions, you got all sorts of different effects. Here's a good trick for lighting, little photographic lamps. They don't actually have, these are Lowell Omni. This is news gathering equipment, basically, little tripod stand. I think they went up to about 8 or 9 feet maximum. So everybody had 2, one rear quarter light, like this one. See, we're filming this, so I'm rather keen to keep this. We'll digress into... The way I've lit myself is I've got a key light over there, which is actually lighting most of me. I've got a fill light there, which cuts out the shadow on this side, because that light's over there. And this light gives me my 3-dimensional shape. If I didn't have this light, the camera would perceive me as a 2-dimensional cutout. And the screen behind is the background register. If I didn't have the screen behind, and I was a lead singer, and there was a drummer behind me, the camera would see me as the giant with this tiny little drummer on my shoulder, because there's no depth reference. Also, if you keep it dark enough, the camera iris will open up, which shortens the depth of field, focal field. So I'm in focus, the drummer way back there is out of focus. That also creates a sense of depth. Television, camera, you have to light everything for television camera right now, and for the entire future. You go to a concert now, and what do you see? 500 people with 1 little megapixel phone cameras, and they are streaming straight to the internet, and everybody goes back to the dressing room, hotel room, and they watch your work critically on YouTube from a 1 megapixel camera. They forgive the shakiness and the bad positioning and the people in front, but if they can't see themselves on stage, you're in for it. So nowadays I've adopted my new policy, which is like everything for television, which is simply good color correction, good skin tone, quarter light, fill light, key light. That's how you light television. And keep it dim. You don't have to make it bright. There's a moment where it's too dim, and there's a moment where it's too bright. But if it's too bright, the iris in your eye will shut down, decreasing your depth of field, causing the background to defocus. This is something I really recommend everybody to do. You all work in some kind of entertainment, hope to work in some kind of entertainment. Well, do you have cameras? Do you see people with cameras? Yeah, have you seen any of your work on YouTube? You'll be surprised. It's there, and it doesn't go away. And if the civilization we live in now lasts for 200 years, you can be damn sure it'll be there somewhere. It'll be buried, but some historian's going to dig it out, and they will be critical of it. They go, look what they were doing back in the turn of the century there. I mean, And it's going to haunt you. So, yeah, but there's your posterity, bad YouTube videos, sorry. So if you light it really well, even bad video looks good when it's lit well. And that's the simple key, is the key light, fill light, and quarter light, or the rear light. And for television, that one is possibly one of the most important component for depth. Anyway, meanwhile, back on Peter Gabriel. This is where I actually started, I didn't actually have this in mind. These are photographic lamps with barn doors, and each person had his own personal pair. One was a quarter light, and one was a fill light. That's shining down on this guitarist, Blur, here, and this is filling him from the front side. Here's Mr. Gabriel here. And these cranes tracked around. You can see the operator sitting in his little dolly seat here. And this had 550 pounds of ballast on the back end. In our case, we used lead, and I think it should have used steel. The lead was actually encapsulated in some kind of rubbery solution. And 117 pounds of moving heads on the front. 3 lights, only 117 pounds. They were pathetically small, actually, by modern standards. And they tilted, and this is from a song called No Self-Control, and they beat him up. This is the man here. This is a 3-second time lapse. And you can see they're actually booming up and down, and just being generally nasty. And they seem to adopt a character of their own. This was a very successful tour because these 12 lights kept on repositioning. So every song had a whole new little lighting rig. There are 12 lights over here for one song. There are 12 lights across the back. There are 12 lights over here. They came all the way round and lined up in front, and he danced in between them. I mean, they were very good. This is an arena-sized tour, and the total is 103 lights. Eric doesn't like that very much, but it was minimal, but it was very effective. Everybody had a place, everybody was lit in place, and we had these lights that performed, and the cranes that performed as well. He just put this tour out again last year. It was the 25th anniversary of this particular tour, so he did it all over again, which is quite remarkable if you ask me. Okay, materials. This is a proposal, one sketch. This is actually, the material is paper, felt tip, water-based felt tip pens, ink and pencil. Adam Sandler, this is for an HBO television special, but he was going to do on the road. So he had a little tour made between one movie and the next movie. He had a 6-week holiday. I want to go and be a rock star. So he gets a really good band together. And my brief was, I want to play in my mum's backyard. And the drive-in movie 2 blocks down the road is what you see over the fence. So here we have the vocalist standing in the little patio, the porch. The drummer's in the jacuzzi. The guitarist, there's a fence wall here. This is the garden shed. In the windows, all sorts of nonsense happened. I think there was a murder, some obscenities. I mean, Adam Sandler's Adam Sandler. It was very funny. Everything had to be funny. We had trash cans. Now, it was actually very simple to do. And my only regret was we didn't get Home Depot to sponsor us, because every single piece of equipment on here, including the umbrellas, came from the garden department. Everything came from Home Depot. The trash cans. One of the trash cans had his amplifier dumped in it. There was another trash can that had a false rubber head. It was actually modeled on the production manager, who refused to recognize himself, which was very funny. And he used to lift up the lid, and then there's the head, and fake salad, silk leaf salad, and he'd sing to the head and then just put the lid back on. That was endless gags, endless gags. It was all very funny, and it was, chain link fence. I think the percussionist was actually behind the chain link fence. And in here, little photographic lamps that uplit into the umbrellas. And other than that, it was really straightforward. Roscoe black rear projection screen in the windows. There's a good thing for, this is a rear projection screen, but it's a gray. Black doesn't have, you wouldn't be able to see what was on the screen because you're so far off the plane. But black projection screen used as a window material or any kind of background material is good because it goes away when you don't light it. If I took the picture off of this now, the ambient light in the room, you'd see it's gray and it'll look like a dead eye. Okay, let's get to that point in lighting. Lighting is about maintaining control of the visual environment. When you take a light, when you go to blackout, for example, it'll be black for about a second and a half until the iris opens all the way up again, and you start seeing the brightest thing in the room, the exit sign, and all the little ambient glow, and you've lost control of your visual environment. So as a designer, you want to, yeah, you can use blackouts, but don't stay there. Always come back, even if it's just a dark UV. Everything must have your signature on it, your color. You must paint everything all the time. Otherwise, it's like stepping out of role. The screen suddenly becomes a dull surface instead of an interesting place. So this is how I teach you lighting. We're just going to ramble through everything and lighting and how a lighting is important and points of lighting that make things work and not work. So the black RP screen, you can get that from Roscoe Lux. It's Roscoe, isn't it? That's just a regular lighting supply company. They do gels and projection screen. The black material is good because when you don't light it, it actually does go away. There's some more examples of that, how I use that. So you're trying to sell yourself to a client, or you're trying to sell yourself, your idea to a boss. It doesn't matter who you are, you're trying to sell something, and part of that package you're trying to sell is yourself. You're trying to sell a flight of fantasy to somebody who's probably never going to see it. If they're the performer, they're in it. They'll never see in its true light, pardon the pun. But you've got to convey to them not only your idea, but your confidence and ability. That's actually really a tough sell. It really is a tough sell. You have to be confident, you have to know what you're talking about, and you have to compete against other people. Now, as I said before, CAD drawings are really useful. They're a great technical tool. I use them all the time. But when it comes to presentations, be personal. Come up with a nice drawing. This is all about suggestion. And again, you're using the best tool in your toolbox is somebody else's imagination. The idea here is there's a drum riser, 8 foot tall with a drummer on top of it, and there's stairs and whatever ramps and so on. That's hardly the point. It's the opening moment. If you can do a great opening, and entertainers understand this, if you can start well, you'll get the rest done, and all you have to really focus on is finishing well. It's entertainment. You have to be entertaining. Entertainers are suckers for entertainment. It seems to follow anyway. So the door opens here, and there's a blaze of light. In fact, behind it, inside there is nothing but a slab of mole phase or blinders. The silhouette, there's nothing else lit. The door opens, and the light comes straight down to this little thrust and on into the audience. And the person, whoever it is, this is Kylie Minogue actually, and she would walk out in a blaze of light until they get to about there. When the follow spots would come on, the lighting rig would come up, and these lights would dim down as the doors closed. It's that simple, but that was a really stunning beginning. She liked it. Also, later, we introduced the idea of ramps and runways because she has a whole bunch of dancers. Okay, so there's the idea. And here is a much more technical point. A little sterile. She wouldn't have really enjoyed this, but it does show the whole idea. So here's horn section on this platform. Dancers would have run and gambled all the way around here. Piano wasn't there in the end. The piano was over here. There's the doors. An idea of a runway. And here's the lighting rig, real straightforward. Complicated lighting rigs don't tour very well. Too many nuts and bolts. And at the end of the day, if you put all the lights in the air, in all those positions, it doesn't matter what shape the truss is. Up to a point, this is quite an effective because it reaches out over the audience, and it's also high here and low here. But at the end of the day, if you didn't see the truss, and we didn't light all this with truss toners, you just see the lights, and then and there's a geometry to the lights in this arrangement, so you're going to start seeing lines of lights as opposed to curves of trusses. If the trusses weren't lit, you just see the lights. So, you know, oh sure, I could put all sorts of octagons up here, and I've done that, and you'll see that. But this is very practical, because I'm going to spend most of my money down here, which is far more interesting than up here, because this is the person, the money. You know, it's an expression, I hate it, but it's like the money, you're going to stay safe. And it's true, people are far more interesting than equipment. scenery. Scenery and backgrounds, this is what it is. It's background material. The people are far more interesting, and their costumes, especially their costumes. Diana Ross is one of my clients. She's an old lady, and she is a big old-time diva in big costumes. We have 6 or 7 costume changes. Each one is bigger and bigger than the one before. And if you do that right, the rest falls in behind her. Then she's got 12 musicians. They're really interesting visually, and they all keep stepping out into the limelight, and they all play their solos, and it's a very big people show. So light the people, and then we just put up some nice images in the background, and some simple curved shapes, which I will reveal all to later. So anyway, that's a CAD drawing versus a pen and ink drawing. This is just an idea. You can have this one if you want. These are all free. They're not copyrighted. So the idea here is 3 big projection screens that are on a traveling track or some means of tracking them forwards. They also lower up and down, and at the same time they pitch. So you can change the position and the up and down stage. This was diagonal, this one was diagonal, and this just one moves straight up and down. And that would cause, well, you could bring them in all down in front of here, dump them on the deck, and you'd have a screen here, and a screen here, and you've got a mini theater. And most of the lighting rig was actually on it. This is purely idea, never did do this, but it's pretty straightforward. Here are some battens of lights that tilted. They were aircraft landing lights. They don't make those anymore, but there's plenty of alternatives. In fact, more, you're spoiled for choice nowadays. Moving lights, moving profiles, spotlights, moving wash lights, moving spots, another one of those, and some strobes. And the mechanism, this is a big old projector. In a real world, well, again, this could still be relevant. I'd use an 18,000 lumen projector here. Very, very bright. You can always dim that down. You can never make dim brighter. You can always make bright dimmer. Here's the regular screen rear projection. I wouldn't use black here, or I'd like to, but the drop-off to the side is too much, and consequently in a bigger room where you've got seating past 180 degrees, those people here and those people here are going to definitely lose that side or that side. So that's how it is. That's all stock material. You might have, depending on the size, even the screen could be a rental. So that's all rental, everything. And this guarantees the projector stays with the same distance as the screen constantly, and with a chain motor here, one here, one here. You can raise and lower the whole thing as one, or you could raise that motor and pitch this whole thing. Well, you just basically tip it forwards. If you had enough weight on there and it was perfectly balanced, you could mostly tip it back up the other way, so it's at that angle. But I don't see why you'd want to do that, because there's no audience up in the roof. So there's an idea. I never did sell that. And once you've found yourself, you haven't sold it once, put it in the catalog, give it to somebody else, because you never sell it again. There's no, everybody's got a bottom drawer of drawings and ideas that never panned out. And if they didn't pan out the first time, well, there are exceptions to that. If it didn't pan out the first time, with the exception of money, it's like, if it didn't pan out because of money, keep it. But if it didn't pan out because somebody didn't particularly like it, lose it. It's, you know, first impressions count, and they're also a good indicator. Another, I mean, anybody, really, I believe anybody can do this. This is an idea. Pencils ready. This is all rental equipment from a company that I particularly like called Transformit, TransFormit.com. They have a huge rental stock of 3-dimensional shapes. The way this works, these crescents, in fact, I use these crescents on quite a few things. This was a television shoot in Singapore. We were there for 2 months. 54 bands for 57 television stations. But the trick is you build a very lightweight aluminum frame, and then you slip the material over it like a pillowcase and zip it up, and it becomes skin tight. It really is taut. They're very, very light. This item here is 18 foot tall. If it wasn't so big, one person can carry it. Two people can carry it quite easily. Because it's got this curved shape, it's freestanding. These were suspended. You can actually brace them back. They've just got this huge rental stock. So that was the original sketch, discussed, this is kind of what I want to do. I knew what the shapes were because they were all in the catalog. They've got a really good website too, actually. And all our shapes have a CAD drawing you can drag and drop into your own CAD program. And I think that works in AutoCAD, Vectorworks, a few other things. But basically, you can take all these, and it's all scaled for you. The only thing you can't do is render them, but that's okay. You can hand color those later. So these are crescents. They're 18 foot. If it was a square, it would be 18 foot square, 14 foot, 10 foot. This is an item called Ice Flow, really useful. When they set it up in their ideal situation, it's about 100 foot wide, but it's only about 16 foot high. But you can stagger them if you're going to hang them. You can stagger them in different things. But the point of this was just to show that all these huge shapes were good for television. What we're looking for here is not only the front of house shot here, the wide shot, but a lot of cross stage shot. And quite a lot of people who design stages for television forget that the camera can look right across. And as soon as you start looking into the wings, it's undecorated, it's dark, you've lost your background register, and now you've got the drummer sitting on the shoulder of the singer again. So here's what it ended up being. Let's see, what are the details here? Oh yes, look, these are actually LED photographic lamps. These got moved to different positions. In this case, they're lighting up a drum. There are two bands set up here. We're shooting on this side of the stage, and we're shooting on this side. While we shoot over here, we shoot there. Most of this is close-up stuff. This is a rope drop. You can just see these fine lines. It's made of regular cotton rope. I'll show you how to do that later. That's a really easy one. You can make that for less than $1,000 in your garage. And it lights like neon. This is a transform item. These is the 18. And they're actually hung, so that's most probably at about 24 feet. Big is good on television. Let's see, keep going. So here's the camera crane. Now, a camera crane is a nightmare for a designer because it will look everywhere, so you really do have to pay attention to the cross shot. They're the photographic lamps moved into a different position, and these also shuffled around. All white material, all inherently fireproof. Very important, actually, fireproof. Especially if you're from New England. They want to see a piece of material so they can burn it and test it. So look, here's the guy. This is the handheld camera, and he's looking right into this wing. Fortunately, there isn't a wing. There's a little gap between that one and that one, which makes it an entrance. There's another cameraman on there somewhere. I think that might be him there. But there's the cross shot. And even if you're using video in a nightclub, your cross shot's important. It's a good shot. There's a good close-up, but the trouble is you forgot about the wing and the sun. So try and get stuff into this wings. But here's the rope drop, and as I say, this is half-inch rope with 6-inch centers, and it just lights really, really well. I use cotton rope because that's inherently fireproof as well. It's a bit like trying to start a lighter that has no fuel. It just smolders and goes out. And pretty affordable. And you can wash it. And, there's a star cloth behind there, another rental item. So everything there fits the budget because it's rental. It's a different budget from purchase. On a small scale, it doesn't matter. It's just money. But the beauty of this is rental. The longer you rent it, the cheaper it gets. And then there's a magic moment where, we might as well just buy it. But as soon as you buy it, you've got to own it, you've got to maintain it, you've got to insure it. You've got to store it. You've got to reflame-proof it. So we're keeping on here. More drawings. This was something I proposed to Boston. I particularly like this, the FUTV antenna. They didn't. They wanted an industrial scene. I couldn't think anything more than this. And CAD drawings, they have a huge usefulness. They're the best measuring tool ever. And it's worthwhile getting into them even on a very simplistic level. Just not instead of building huge trusses, and actually a truss on a CAD drawing takes up quite a lot of memory, and it takes a long time to render. I just use simple blocks. This is to describe an octagon, 3 octagons. It's hung on 1 motor there, 1 motor there, 1 motor there. So the 3 motors working together can get it to do that. You couldn't do that with 4 motors, only 3. And in the middle was a block of lights. And this, all these lines radiating are actually 200% rubber bungee. Again, 1/2 inch. And at the very end here, it's a 6-inch center. There's a purpose to that. There was a reason for that size. Is if it gets thinner and you get more of them, or if they get closer together, you get this amazing moire pattern happening, which is pretty to start with, but really annoying, especially to the eye. And camera just cannot handle it at all. So it causes this. It causes the image to diffract, actually. And then down here, octagonal risers, keyboards, drums, a ramp. There's a story to this, actually. This is Yes. John Anderson is a fairly short guy, about 5'6". But Trevor Rabin and Chris Squire, the bass and guitarist, are both over 6 foot. So he always felt really small, and his suggestion to me was, I want a couple of steps up to my microphone so I'm as tall as these guys. So my suggestion was, and my explanation was, well, you should just walk backwards and we'll build a ramp here. And you will elevate. And actually the truth is, in television, stage, film, the depth from here to there, walking upstage and downstage, well, you see the legs move, but nothing really moves from the audience's perception or perspective. So left and right is the big motion, but moving up and down. So he just used to sidle backwards and would go up his ramp here, and he becomes apparently the same size as everybody. In fact, he spent most of his time up here being even taller than everybody. This was all bar metal grating, the whole stage. That was grating with speakers underneath for monitors, and the ramp was, well, let's have a look at it. Here it is. Am I dark or what? Nope. Okay, well, here's the bungee. Now, the whole point of the center cluster, the lights were actually the heaviest we could find. They're moving mirrors. They were heavy, really heavy. And we also had some ballast up there. That's so you can stretch it down, like this is convexed, stretching downwards. Same with this one. This one's being pulled up, so now it's concave. And by tilting the angle of the octagonal truss arrangement, you get twists. This is stretching further than the upstage side. So it's actually quite interesting. And then by rearranging the 3, you got 3 different shapes from the trusses, plus the different use of the bungee. And again, being white bungee, object to illuminate, lit up nicely, and it caused the roof. It was a great high back register. In fact, these used to come quite low, so they'd be at quite a steep angle. And now it's another background. And it's just objects to illuminate, but they were interesting. And rubber bungee is extremely affordable. Well, I wouldn't buy it, but it's affordable. This is all bar metal grating, which is, in a way it's expensive. In another way it's actually quite cheap because it's easy to machine, easy to tool, easy and lightweight, and we cut little holes in. That's a Mark V, very light. There's a lot of old technology, power lamps. These are Mark Vs. These I can't remember what they are, 1220s. Yeah, there's not much. And this is a black rear projection screen, and it's just becoming lit with ordinary cyclorama lights. But it appeared as a black backdrop, but we could light it up. I don't. So that we used to light with patterns and gobo patterns from the front and from the rear, mostly from the rear, and cyclorama lights. So that's a good material. I've always been fond of that. If something works, keep it in the menu, once you've used it, you can experience it. So here we go back to that kind of baseball glove mitt thing. Now this is, believe it or not, a CAD drawing. But I wouldn't show the CAD drawing of this because it looks like this. The previous looked really cool, and it stimulates the imagination. It looks like what it is was that was a whole bunch of neon filter, and tapered lines, and these are just, you just take the picture with straight lines, tape and make it more cartoon-like. Try not showing these clinically mechanical engineering drawings. Okay, we'll continue on this. Are we doing all right on the tape there? Okay. Well, we'll go through this then. This is just a big old suggestion. You'll see more of this later. Star cloth, rental, cheap, nice distant thing. You don't have to use them all the time. It's a black backdrop. These are, oh boy, these are tall. These are 48 feet. These are 20 feet. And they all opened up. The drum riser went up and down. The stairs worked like escalators. They were a platform, and then they became a stair. These were expensive. Ego ramps. Places to go to. That's kind of accommodating your performer. Depending on your music. If you've got people who exercise themselves on stage and they're highly mobile, give them places to go, even if it's just a little podium or some stairs to nowhere. Otherwise, they're just restricted to bopping up and down here, and that gets pretty boring. But if you give them a ramp all the way over here, and ramps and decks are pretty cheap, actually. Again, they're very rentable. Rentable's good. This will give it away. This is a design proposal for Van Halen. And these were all video tiles. And this was, you could have done it with projection, but tiles are much better in this case. They're also they're a light source, like this one behind me. That's dialed right down. What's that at? About 15%? So 15%, that's kind of okay. It's not overpowering your eye. It's not burning into. It's not, but it's a good thing, and that's quite a good resolution too. So this would be that kind of material, and this is actually that fabric material I described earlier, and we just project on that and use those. So a lot of images nowadays with video. Oh, you can do anything with it. It's electronic scenery. Okay, this is where I particularly like this bit. Models and miniatures. So you've got all these people coming along with CAD drawings, and you've just shown that you've got all these drawings. Now, if you can't draw, or you don't feel you can draw or want to draw, your local art school's got loads of people dying to have a project. You don't even really need to have to pay them. You can plead with them, but let them, they'll do something, because your idea is a valuable thing to them, because they have to produce a folio of work by the end of the year, and if that's actually the carrot, you could pay them, take them out to dinner, just make it exciting for them, and they'll turn out. If you can pay them, it's much better, but it kind of keeps them focused. But if not, they can do all these drawings, and you can sit there and say, well, it should be like this. This is how I vision it. You've got a vision. Everybody has a pictorial imagination. So how do we get to here? Yes, modeling. This is actually, all this is made of is, this is 110-pound card, pretty much what business cards are printed on, sharp scalpel, and a steel edge ruler. The trunks are made out of ordinary 24-pound paper, twisted into a tube and pulled out from the middle. And actually what you do is, before you twist it into a tube, you snip all the one edge. And that pauses all these little bits. And this is how I made palm trees. I lost the feeling in this finger, and it never quite returned, by pressing down to cut all these leaves, again made out of cardboard. And it's just painted. Actually, no, the green tree was painted. This stuff is actually digitally printed on a regular printer. And there's a big lump of putty in the bottom to stop it falling over. And this was for something for Sammy Hagar. This is the whole model and all the components. This is a tower. He has a nightclub down in Cabo St. Lucas called Cabo Wabo. At the time, he had a tequila company called Cabo Wabo. And his idea was to sell his lifestyle. Well, that's a kind of a leap of the imagination. But if you drink enough tequila, you think you are his lifestyle. So anyway, here was the bar. And this was a kind of a promotional campaign that they were going to do. These are little speaker boxes, stand-around cocktail cabinets, fake trees. This was a big inflatable of the lighthouse sort of emblem. There is actually the original Cabo logo. And this is just made out of cardboard. It's a palapa, and that was the bar. And these were inflatable stand-up screens which have been printed on digital printing they were in the background. And this was going to just roll up, flip up into a car parking lot. They'd have an instant little party and give away a lot of tequila. And people would go away and buy Cabo Wabo. That was Sky Vodka were actually the distributors, so they were very keen on this. And this is an idea. It's actually quite a good idea. It's all freestanding. Well, that isn't. That's flown on chains. But this is very simple. This is a 5 foot, 5 foot, and 5 foot length of truss. And in between the three sections are two plates, which are actually angle plates, 15 degrees. And then they are set up on, leaning back on little outriggers. And I showed this to, I think it was Michael W. Smith, Christian vocalist. He's quite successful. And he just couldn't understand how this would work. It just looks like it's going to fall over. This blue material is actually just stretched material to a heavy sandbag or a heavy weight and pulled taut. It attaches to the edge of the truss with Velcro. He just couldn't believe it would work. So I built him a model. This is 1/2 inch, it's scale, it's actually made out of basswood, and it's really simple. Each side is in 2 dimensions. I made each side as a template using my CAD program, and then I cut and I made it to size, the exact size, the 1/2 inch scale. And then I used a scalpel and pins, and I laid out the wood and cut it so it was all fitting together, dabbed glue on it, and then after I'd made all 4 sides, I assembled them, and it became 3-dimensional. There's another one. There's another one. I used the same sort of cutting stencil for all 3, stuck on these little outriggers, and he immediately got it. And he also understood I was creative, because I made a simple model. This is model railroads technology. I mean, there are people all over the world doing this in their basements for fun. But models really, really work. Now, this is the same kind of truss, but it's actually, this is 1/2 inch. That's a 10-foot section of truss. It's 5 inches long. 1/2 inch scale, 1:24. But this is 3-dimensional printing. And for this, take this down. Micromark, MIRCOMARK.com. They're a tool manufacturer. And this month, hot off the press, for $700, you can buy your own plastic melting hot table that prints 3-dimensionally. And it'll print up to 7 7/8, so just under 8 inches in 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. And that's actually really good. The trouble is with digital print, with 3-dimensional printing is this had a sprue that was just too thin. It kind of did okay here, but it just couldn't hold the weight while it was warm, so these collapsed. So there's some, you can cheat on that. Do you really need it in there? Well, to show it, you could make it thicker, about half as thick as that maybe. But that's a great way of building models, because now all you have to do is get your CAD drawing to become a solid object. For example, in a CAD drawing, that would more than likely be a tube, and it would be hollow. What you have to do is make it solid, and then you can use that CAD drawing to print your 3-dimensional object. But yeah, I think it's $799, and you get this little digital printer. A Micromark have got all the tools you might need for making models, from lathes to tiny little lathes to just regular blades. More models. They don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be extreme. This is Journey, 1986, raised on radio. The round circles represent power lamps. The squares represent moving lights. I think they were Mark II-C vari-lights. These big slabs, actually the top row is a truss, preloaded truss with 18 lamps in. And then these were these great big mega boxes, and they had wheels on, and there were 25 lamps in each. And they used to hang the truss on 2 motors. They used to assemble these 3 items underneath, and they put a 3rd motor on the bottom here, And they used to start down here, and they'd fly up into this position and pitch up. And it was a big gag for the opening of the show. Everything was down, everything came up. These are 3 triangular. We've seen this before, haven't we? Instead of octagons, they're triangles now. These are moving lights around a center area. I just put a screen in because I'd already bought the space with a triangle. The screen worked rather nicely. And here's the front truss with follow spots and so on, and more pile lamps. And this was all aircraft landing lights, real tight beams. And here's the stage. There's the scale reference. You always need to put a person in. Try and use the famous person. If he's only 5 foot 4 inches, make him 5 foot 4 inches. If he's 6 foot, make him 6 foot. Don't cheat here. This is important, otherwise they won't believe you. Sometimes people don't get models. They see something small. They don't have the ability to judge scale. I figured that was the case of Journey, so I never showed them the model. I took photographs of the model with a scale reference, a person, and that's all they ever saw, these different drawings. And one of the purposes of the drawings was to show the fact that you could sling trusses around into different angles and positions. In '86, this was brand new technology. In fact, there's a story to this. This is a Schulenburg motor control. It was version number 2. It was the first one they actually put out on the market. And it used to count time. So if you wanted to go like this, it used to go 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, 1 second down. So each chain was counting time. But the up is slower than the down, obviously, because there's more weight. So it goes down quicker than it goes up. So we got this really fabulous thing going on where these 2 are doing this, and the middle one's stationary. But they're actually doing this. They're winding their way down because they're doing it on time. And shortly after that, they abandoned that whole method and went to counting chain links. So now it's consistent. It might take longer to go up, but it goes up to the right place and it goes down to the right place. And we're going to... we'll finish this. So there you are, more of the same model, just showing these extreme positions. You can hang lights and screens in, and it really did work. It convinced them that this was going to really happen, and the end result is this. And this is Journey then. This is Steve Perry. This is Randy Jackson. You remember he was from whatever it is, American Idol? Or was it The Voice? No, it was Idol. And here we are, Mark I Berry lights, yes, Mark Is and aircraft landing lights. And it was actually quite good because by moving the truss, you got totally different effects out of all the lights. And you had them in multiple positions. There was one song where we brought the sides down and flattened them up so they're vertical, so the light just shone straight across the stage. For one song only. It was actually really awful, but it was a great event. Down they came, did their thing, awful, and then they went back up again. All I had to do was minimize the awful. And yeah, that's how it works.